Thank you. Ernest Urtasun.
Thank you, Mr. President. A recent letter published and signed by over 50 international NGOs calls on the ECB to lead by example when it comes to increasing financial transparency over the risks and implications of climate change. The letter underlines in particular the importance of transparency and disclosure in relation to climate change and welcomes the role of the Financial Stability Board, which puts climate change firmly on the agenda, establishing the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. President Draghi, given that the ECB currently holds over 440 billion worth of private sector assets through its various asset purchase programs, what are your views on the possibility that the ECB could, as a public institution, lead by the example and apply voluntarily the recommendations of the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures? Do you stand ready to recommend such a way forward to the ECB Governing Council? And then I have a second question. In a recent speech you made in Florence, Mr. Draghi, you called for an effective countercyclical support of aggregated demand. I would like you to outline further about this. What would be the main features of such an instrument, and what features and size should this have to make it macroeconomically meaningful? Thank you.
Let me start by the second question first. The presence of some fiscal capacity with some stabilization function is considered essential to complete the monetary union and to make it more resilient, less vulnerable. But also in the very same speech you mentioned, I said that the more you have private risk sharing, the less you need public funds to finance the stabilization function. To give you an example, in the United States, which is by and large a well-functioning monetary area, 75% of risks are shared by the private financial markets, and 25% are shared through the working of the federal budget, namely states or parts of the union that see a recession would automatically pay less taxes, other automatic stabilizers, but especially the unemployment insurance system. In Europe, the same figure is 40% privately shared through financial markets, and the rest is shared through the operation of government budgets. So in a sense, the more complete is our capital market union and our banking union, the smaller will be the size of the fiscal capacity that we need to stabilize the economy through the use of public funds. This is I believe, quite important point to remember in our discussions. And it's part of the general point I just made, that risk reduction and risk sharing come together. One complements the other, rather than we, as we had discussed for a long time, being opposite to each other. Now, on the first question, I should tell that the ECB certainly supports the general economic policies, the aims of the Union, supports the conclusion of the Paris Climate Agreement, and certainly we do also support directly and indirectly the ongoing work in various international fora, and join the network for greening the financial system, which brings together central banks and supervisors committed to developing common supervisory and macroprudential practices to address climate-related and environmental risks. Now, the eligibility criteria of our corporate sector purchase program have been deliberately defined in a broad way so that we don't discriminate against green bonds. Mind, the eligibility criteria are primarily guided by monetary policy consideration and the fact that we have to comply with our mandate, which is price stability. But our monetary policy certainly includes green bonds. We bought a lot of green bonds, and we are buying a lot of EIB, European Investment Bonds, European Investment Bank bonds, which is one of the world's largest issuer of green bonds. So bottom line is we are trying to do our best within the limit that within the limits that guide our monetary policy. Thank you.